Marshall, welcome back to Late Night in the Midlands.
Hey guys, I'm game for anything, but no dead fish. No dead fish.
No dead fish. All right.
Skip the anchovies, just pepperoni and beer.
Yep, I've got the pizza. Believe me, I do. And I'm substituting the beer for coffee for right now.
Oh boy, been a long day, huh?
Yeah. Not really. I'm actually in a good mood. The trolls cheer me up. You know, when they attack, I love it. It just makes me feel good. But Marshall, welcome back, and I know you've got some information you want to share, and we're looking forward to learning. So by all means.
All right. Well, there is a lot to do since the last time we talked. We've released 3 videos in our Planet X 101 series, and you can see that at yowza.com, YOWUSA.com, and we have the ones we've brought up are Deep Impact, Nibiru Nearing, and Pole Shift. And just real briefly, Deep Impact, we were doing the AMS meteor data, and the trends there are not looking good. If the trends continue, we could very well have a deep impact event that would swamp a coastline. If the trends do not reverse quickly. Nibiru Nearing is the one that seems to really have hit a nerve with the elites. Excuse me. We have several observations, including several from Turrialba, that webcam we've been tracking in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And in response to our program, which went up on June 8th, the U.S. government had the camera tilted down into the dirt, so it's no longer usable. So what they've done is they've stopped the making that webcam or that surveillance camera available for viewing. And if you go to my webpage at YOWUSA.com, you can see the Planet X 101 series, all 4 programs. It's about 3 hours. And for those of you who are newbies, it distills what would be the equivalent of 3 years of personal research effort into 3 hours. So this is a really fast and friendly way to bootstrap yourself into the topic. But also when you're there, read our article, It's Time to Look Up. And in that article, I document blow by blow. But this is smoking gun proof of suppression on the topic.
Yeah, and Marshall, if you remember correctly, after the last time you were on, I had to email you to let you know that, not that I'm anybody special or important, but I, double check stuff. I took like timestamps from your video and I went and looked, and I could account for everything except for that object. And, so
yeah, that is, and then I get people saying, well, it's a reflection on this and it's a reflection on that. Well, in previous videos, we have shown the object slipping behind the cloud bank. So tell me if a reflection can do that. I don't think so.
Yeah. Peter?
So.
I'm here. Sorry, I was just listening.
Oh,
I had watched the videos earlier, and Marshall, I have to say, I've been interviewing you personally for about 3 years, and I've noticed over that period of time, at least 3 years, and over that period of time, you've continued to refine your work and provide more accurate data. And now, I'm thinking, okay, sooner or later this is going to have to show up. I was not a big, and I'm still not, quote, a big fan of Nibiru, but for different reasons now. But I wasn't, based on Zecharia Stitchin's work, I was not a big fan of Nibiru. I said, hey, we're crossing the galactic plane, and I can see Earth evidence of this. However, we watched Elenin come in and go out, and that wasn't Nibiru. And we watched Ison come in and go out, and that was supposed to be everything from the motherships in Nibiru. And no, it's not time yet. And I knew these things based on the prophecies, based on the timing that's laid out in the prophecies. However, when I'm listening to this data here that you're presenting, and I'm looking at the timeline of my data in the prophecies, I'm saying, uh-oh, heads up.
Yeah. I mean, that is, whichever way you cut it, we're in deep poodoo.
We are.
Yeah, and it's the timing of the events, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but it's the timing of the events with the blood tetrad moons that started in April on Passover, and they're going to end on the festival of booths, which is Sukkot, September 28th, 2015. Interestingly enough, the next Passover has been miscalculated. It's on the calendar as April 22nd, when indeed, when you do the calculations as prescribed, it should be March 23rd. Interesting. It may come at a time when you think not.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't think you'll mistake
I'm looking at these things and what you're saying, and I'm saying, okay, well, maybe we should pay attention to what Marshall has to say.
Yeah, I find the denial factors is just amazing to me. If you create a Google search string, end times, Bible, and deception, okay? You plug that, end times plus Bible plus deception. You put that into Google, and it comes up with like 1.63 million results. So people are used to talking about, well, yeah, there's going to be deception. 1.63 million results. I mean, stop and think about it. These are web pages that are hitting on these keywords in that sequence. And yet people still say, well, if it was that big, the government would have to tell us about it because it would be that big.
Yeah, and if you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn that's for sale. It's going cheap. It's going quick. To you, whoever wants to buy it, $300 million. You can put a toll booth on it, and we're good to go. You can make your money back in a year. I promise you. There's a lot of traffic that goes across that bridge.
And it's. What I'm seeing is, is just part and part of the suppression. What makes the suppression really so effective is that people really do tend to cling to the bliss of their ignorance like jealous lovers. They don't want the news. But there's a growing minority of them that do, and that are waking up to it. And so that for me was the key issue here to creating the Planet X 101 series, which is about 3 hours of video and capped off with Pole Shift, which gets into a look at, what would the celestial mechanics be in terms of the causality of a pole shift. And after you've watched this for 3 hours, you're going to see a lot of hard evidence. You're going to see a lot of observations. You're going to see a lot of science. You're also going to see other things. You're going to see prophecy, predictions. It pulls all of the interest angles in there. But at the end of it, if you've gone through the whole 4 episodes in the series, which takes about 3 hours, you'll have consolidated 3 years of personal research. And at that point, you're going to have a really strong mastery of the topic. And the reason why I'm doing that for the newbies is I really want them to jumpstart and to be able to get into it, because they do not have the benefit of time that people have had in the past to contemplate all of this. They really need to get rocking and rolling much faster. And so for that reason, I've got myself working on a dual track where I need to work with the newbies, which is why I do this series, but my greater emphasis right now is to begin helping people who are going to who've already committed to surviving this.
Let me ask you.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Marshall. No, you could finish up.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you. I'd like for you to one more time go over why it's not a lens flare. And I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying for those who keep trying to, point out and say, oh, it's a lens flare. Can you explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, because lens flare, sundog, these have become knee-jerk denial rejections.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the video, really, and look at the pictures the evidence that Marshall presents, or the videos, actually.
Right.
A picture's worth 1,000 words. Yeah.
It is. And, the thing of it that I find a little frustrating is people who say this, or people who, I say, well, have you followed my work? Have you watched my videos? Have you seen everything we've presented? And, it's no. But it's a sundog. But you haven't looked at my work. No, it's a sundog. And you're not going to look at my work. No, I'm not going to waste my time looking at your work. And I mean, it's this, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But, when we started looking at this, of course that's going to happen. Now, I've been in this game since 1999. That's when I wrote my first articles in this field. And it was in about 2003 that I started seeing a real heavy disinformation effort by the operatives being planted with these sundog cell phone pictures. And this was in the days when you had the early camera phones that had, like 1 to 2 megapixel cameras. 2 megapixels was woo. And these cameras had really primitive circuitry compared to what we have now. And so all they had to do was just take it, name it at the sun, and shake it back and forth. And they could get it to do all kinds of stupid things and create halos and reflections and sundogs.
And Marshall, I just want to say one thing here. What you're pointing out here is extremely important. At one time, I had my own photography business, and I used Hasselblad and Rolleiflex. There's a reason why I used those cameras.
Rolleiflex. Good Lord, man, you had the good stuff.
Yeah, and if I really wanted to expand the film, I had a Mamiya RB67, and that's I'm dealing with a piece of film which is 3 inches by almost 4 inches. And I would use ultrafine grain so I could turn around and take that picture and blow it up to a 3x4 photograph, 3 foot by 4 foot photograph, and it would look crisp and clear. So having and with the circuitry, when I love digital cameras. Big frustration with digital cameras. Now that they're getting up into the 40 megapixel range, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, but still,
you're dealing with circuitry and
still
the camera's
dealing with
brain.
Circuitry and batteries. And I got to be honest with you, when I've gone out on certain shoots, I still have a good old 35 millimeter Olympus, and I'll go buy film and use it because click, you got it, click. And with these digital cameras, it's click, and it just takes forever for them to image. They just don't have the speed unless you're going to go out and buy these really expensive ones. But then you run out of batteries. Then you run out of chips. I mean, the old Olympus, I just get a bag of film and maybe a couple extra batteries, and I'm good to go for a trip. And so it's getting there. But the big thing that we're really finding right now people are using for observations are smartphones. And here's what really made a huge shift in the disinformation effort, because back when the cell phones were 1 to 2 megapixels, you could get all of these aberrations. And so they just started flooding the internet with this nonsense. All right. And we were watching it. We've documented it. You can find it on our site. We were, documenting what was happening years ago. Not that anyone is ever interested in history. And, however, things changed in a very pronounced way when Apple brought out the first of the iPhones. I think back then it was about, 8 megapixel was the camera, but it just simply, the iPhone set a whole new standard. And at that point, what we saw was that the disinformationalists stopped the campaign. But they had already achieved their goals. They had gotten the terms reflections and sundogs injected into the public domain. And consequently, when people would look at pictures coming off of smartphones, they would brand them as sundogs just as fast as they would coming off of these junky little phones, which we won't even use images that come in from those phones. They're just very problematic. But the smartphones, now you're talking 10, 12 megapixels and more. I've got a Galaxy S4 Active, and my God, the picture resolution is amazing. And so once those came in, the disinformation campaign chilled out, but the damage was already done. And so people were already inoculated against these kind of images. And the thing is, with a smartphone, you can get reflections and sundogs in an image, but you can also, unlike with the cheap cameras or the older cameras, which were very poor, you can differentiate between a legitimate object and some sort of aberration, reflection, or sundog. And so you can make those distinctions in a better resolution camera. And so, you still have this thing where people jump to it. Now, when we started tracking Turrialba, all right, and this is 3 different camera systems, and one was a standard definition, one was high definition, and the current one, which was gifted by the United States government, is about as clear as mud. And however, we've acquired Nibiru with all 3. But what's more important is
that you're talking about.
Yeah. Correct? But the point here is, and we've already put it in one of our past videos, all right, is that we have images of Nibiru slipping behind a cloud bank. Now, Peter, you were a professional photographer. How does a reflection or sundog or a lens aberration slip behind a cloud bank?
It doesn't. When the sun, whenever that bright object goes behind the sun or clouds, that flare should go away. As a matter of fact, my favorite day to shoot, especially outdoors, was on overcast days. No sun, no haze. You don't have to worry about any kind of lens flare being in the way. And with a little touch of light, hey, you had your own sun.
Yeah, but so, the point is that if you have a lens flare, all right, the lens flare is just going to stay there. It's an aberration. It'll appear in front of a cloud as all right. But if it's a natural object, it will. In other words, if it's a lens flare, it's between you and whatever you're imaging.
Correct.
If it's a natural object, all right, then it's a natural object, and then it can be obscured.
Oh, sure. And when it goes behind the cloud, that's pretty much it. You're not going to see. It should go completely away. Now, depending on what's causing that lens flare,
it goes away because it is obscured. But if it is a lens flare is an aberration that happens in front of what you're shooting. It's between you and the target. Exactly. That's where lens flares occur, is between you and between what you're shooting.
And they should be off to the side, typically.
Well, the lens flare is just going to stay there until you shift the camera view, you do something different. You do something dramatic. All right. So the point here is we went through and we did a lot of work. I mean, God, we spent weeks on this stuff, reviewing the images, because we knew there would be this knee-jerk nonsense coming out. But also as researchers, we didn't want to go down a rabbit hole. So we want to make sure, first off, is this a reflection, a lens aberration, a flare of some sort? No. Okay, when we did our deep analysis on it, no. Were there flares, were there sun flares and other aberrations occurring? Yes. But because we had high resolution imagery, you can sort between the two. Then we knew we had a natural object. Now, one of the things that we do is called a gamma test. That is the easiest way. Gamma is a way of adjusting your images in a digital format. It's not for film. Gamma is digital. It's desktop publishing. And so if you have a reflection, reflections are what we call cold objects. All right, so you turn the gamma down to 0, you'll always see the sun. But your reflections or your sundogs will disappear because they're cold images. They're not generating their own light. These are reflections of light that is already existing in the environment. So because the light has been bent through the distortion, it's not going to have the same heat, if you will. It's not going to be hot. It's going to be cold. And that is the principal way we use gamma for the test. And so when we look at it, you pull the gamma down to 0. And if that object is still there, then you know that that object is generating light. Because the only thing that'll go to 0 gamma is something that's generating light. All right. We do that, but also we go and we look at feathering. All right. If you have reflections and you do an intense close-up, you go down to the pixel level. Now, this is the reason why you need to have the high resolution. Because with high resolution, you can really zoom in on this, especially when if you have original source files.
This gives you one big advantage with the digital camera that you're not going to have with a film camera, because you'd have to be looking at the raw negatives under a loupe to actually look at what grains of silver were exposed.
Yeah, that's really it. And the thing about it with digital is when you get the raw image file, you're essentially doing the same thing. You can really go down. And that's when we're looking for, the other thing besides gamma is we're looking for edge definition. All right. And an object that's generating its own light is going to have a crisper edge when you really zoom down on it. And a reflection is not. Reflection's always going to have a soft edge. So are sundogs. And guys, so these are the kind of things that we do when we're evaluating these images. And I'm just not going to be buffaloed by a bunch of disinformation operatives who have just gone out and tainted, the discussion with, they do that. Like now the current thing is, before sundog, and everybody says it because they think, oh, it makes me sound intelligent. Okay, good. All right. And they really don't understand to the level that we do. Now the new term after sundogs that the disinformationalists have created is fear porn. Okay? And so these are code words. These become code words. This is social programming. And when you hear these code words, the immediate emotional message people get is, don't look at this. Don't look at this. Don't look at this. All right? And that's how it works. It's effective because people want it to be effective.
We've got to take a break, guys. So we'll pick right back up on this. I do want to ask you this quick before the break. Didn't the clouds, they played a significant role in showing that it wasn't a lens flare too, did they not? if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
if the object disappears behind the cloud, all right, then you know that that object is behind the cloud. And a lens flare is going to be between you and the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Lens flares live directly right in front of the camera. All right? Real natural objects are wherever they are in front of the camera. And that means if that object is slipping behind a cloud bank, that means that object is in space and it is behind the cloud. And that's the reason why it slips behind the cloud bank.
Yeah, your lens flare could actually is most likely right within the lens itself.
Yeah, a lot of these are, this is going to be within the lens. If you have a surveillance camera, it has a housing. The housing will have a glass that's protecting the lens, so you can get an interaction between the lens and the camera and the surveillance housing, protective filter that's in front of it. But in the final analysis, whether it's sundogs, reflections, or whatever, it's all going to take place within an inch or two of the imaging circuitry. All right. Whatever's existing in the environment is whatever's going to be in the environment. And in the case of Turrialba, we're looking at infinity as the setting. So, we're shooting the other side of a volcano. Behind that is going to be cloud banks. Behind the cloud banks is going to be the sun and whatever objects are visible. And then, of course, once we've determined that it's a natural object, the next thing we have to do is it a cataloged object? And this is the other thing. I mean, we always hear that they go Venus, 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 Venus.
And I was able to account.
Hey, you know what? Right there in what we're showing you, you have the direction, you have the time of day, you have the location. Go get Stellarium and check for yourself. Do they ever do it? No, because they like sounding intelligent by going Venus, 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 Venus. If they would look, they would see it's not a cataloged object.
All right.
You already did that, right?
Michael did, yes. Marshall,
Yeah.
when we come back from the break, I want to ask you about Antarctica.
All right. Okay, Peter, take us into the break while you're there.
Folks, stay with us. After the break, we'll be going to Antarctica.
We'll be back, everyone. This will be a bad luck day, but I'll tell you, why do I always feel so good on Friday the 13th? That might be bad.
It's a full moon besides.
Oh,
this isn't going to happen for like another 80 years or something like that. I forgot exactly what it was. But I get a kick out of it. I always like Friday the 13th. It's like, okay, let's stare destiny in the face, and especially on a full moon. But where Friday the 13th got its unlucky aura from?
I don't know.
It was
Knights Templars.
Yes, it was Friday the 13th that they started rounding up Knights Templar and officially ended the order. Or at least those who are running the order anyway.
See, and Friday the 13th has never been a bad luck day for me. I've never had a Friday the 13th that I could look back on and say, oh my God, I'm not getting out of bed today. They've always been pretty good, so I don't know.
I agree with you. It's like, hey, today's Friday the 13th. Cool, let's go live life.
Yeah. Good night to drink and watch some scary movies, right?
Speaking of which, Marshall, I've been watching Antarctica for at least 2 or 3 years. It's right on my main feed here. It's the second Newmeyer station that I've been watching. Their essential semi-live snapshot feed of the station and the horizon. And I've watched the sun rise lots of times, and I've watched the moon rise lots of times, and I've seen some things I can't explain. Now, some can be explained by, quote, lens flares. As a matter of fact, the first time I looked at something, I go, wait a minute, what in the world is going on here? What am I actually seeing? But I've seen some things which can't be explained by lens flares, and there's one that's going on now. But here's the interesting thing. You brought up the volcano, where they swapped out the camera, and the image turned to garbage. Well, the camera that they had at Neumayer Station was a pretty good camera. It showed everything. It had, oh wow, the Aurora Borealis, or I guess it's down there. It's what is the Aurora Borealis, or whatever the heck it is. That it's called something differently down there. The Southern Lights, the equal thereof. Beautiful. You'd see it right in color some nights. The light in the sky would just light up green and different shades, and you can watch the shimmer as you watch the still photo. Changed out the camera. Now it looks like you have an old black and white TV that you turn around and you're in between channels, or you're on a channel that's not transmitting, and you got nothing but snow coming across. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that they actually put in a little sub-screen camera next to it, so you could still see that the station was there without the snow. Now, they have improved the resolution of it a little bit, but boy, not like it used to be. Now, the interesting thing is that I've been watching something rise almost every morning for at least a year that I've been writing off as Venus. I'm not an astronomer. I'm not going to go run down and educate myself in something that I barely know, to go find information that doesn't really affect my life today, something that I already know is coming. And I've got a man that is dedicated to understanding it, and his information is right at my fingertips. So, seeing as you're here, do you keep track of what's going on? How closely do you follow what's going on in Antarctica?
I'm always getting stuff, coming across the transom on that. And oftentimes we find it is a cataloged object. And so you don't get anything. In terms of the resolution being changed, I mean, that's obvious. Instead of going in and mucking with the camera feeds, because things do sometimes fall through the cracks, it's just easier, to replace high definition cameras with clear as mud cameras. I mean, I think literally they had to go and get some of the original cameras that were used to film the Kennedy-Nixon debate.
Yeah, it almost seems that way. It's like,
they just look awful. That's what they did, with Turrialba. The first two systems were put up by the university that operates it there in Costa Rica. And when the second system, which was a very nice high-definition system, when it was disabled during a volcanic eruption, and these things happen, it's a very active volcano, it's a very dangerous environment up there, and it's hard on the cameras. The thing about Turrialba that's very different from other volcano cams and surveillance cameras or webcams is that 99% of the other volcano cams are all pointed out to the east, because that's either they're pointed directly to the east or they're pointed right down into the mouth of the volcano. To the east, they want those really fabulous, sunrise pictures in the morning, which are really fun to look at. With Turrialba, what they could only work from the eastern flank of the volcano. It was the only safe place where they could mount a camera looking out to the west-southwest. And the purpose of the volcano camera for Turrialba is actually, it's principally for the benefit of the people who live at the base of the volcano, because they get up in the morning and, they're not tuning into, Good Morning America. They're tuning into the volcano feed to see if they're going to need to bust a move that day. And so it's always had a very good field of view to show people what's happening in the volcano, particularly with a couple of events there. And the second camera, which was high definition, which was installed, I think, in late 2012, and that was the one that we did all our imaging on in 2013, we've probably got over 1,000 captures of Nibiru from that camera system. And it was toasted, I believe it was in May of 2013, and then the feed went dark, came back, I believe, in July, and with a camera that was gifted to them by the United States government. And it was just the worst camera. It reminded me of those old 2-megapixel cell phone cameras. It just was that bad. It had a very wide focus, and it was installed with a peculiar tilt and a zoom. It was very difficult to use, and actually through the remainder of 2013, we would monitor it. We have team members who monitor it, and we just couldn't find anything useful. However, in January of this year, Nibiru is nearing, it is getting bigger,